Okay, our next video, I'm going to show you how to make the candy wrapper bags. Basically, it's kind of done the same way, but I thought I would show you how I open up my candy wrappers. It depends on the bag itself. The front and the back are pretty nice, so I might use it for the front and the back of a bag. I don't normally do that. Most of the time when I do my candy bags, I use the candy wrapper in the front and I use a coordinating fabric in the back. They're just a little bit more durable that way. This would be a nice size for a kid, like for pencils or whatever, just their little trinkets. And so, like I said, I think maybe it's just a little bit more durable with the fabric on the back. So it's entirely up to you. But this bag is nice because it does have the words on both sides and the graphics. Now, when you get a bag like this, so in other words, this one I would open from each side and make it two separate pieces. A bag like this, where it's up the middle, if you wanted to make a great big bag, then I would do this with it. You can see where I've opened it up and I've saved part of the back. I saved this side when I opened it up, and I cut away the nutrition. Nobody needs to be reminded how many calories are in these things. And then when I stipple this, obviously my hoop is not big enough, so I had to stipple it in two sections. Now I do have the Kimberbell blue tiles, and I probably will be teaching a class on that. But this was just done in two separate hoopings on my embroidery machine with the designs that I've given you. So this is just a plain stipple. What I did was I printed out on a sheet of paper this size, as big as my hoop, my machine would let me. So I printed it out and I laid it on here, and then I kind of marked where this section stopped. Then after I had this one hooped, I just took that piece of fabric or piece of paper and I laid it over here, and I laid the paper up against this side of the stippling, and I lined it up as good as I could and hooped it again. Then when it's stitched, obviously over here, there's a little bit over here, I just taped the edge of this down, and over here where it stitched, it just stitched onto the stabilizer. And if you wanted to put a piece of batting in there, you could. Now this batting, I must not have had any stable bat, because this batting's pretty lofty. And this bag will be, although the bag will be fairly big, I haven't made anything out of it yet, obviously. I haven't made one quite this big. I might do a little bit different. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. When I ever get it done, then I'll bring it in and show you. And on that one, I actually did stipple some orange fabric for the back of it. Again, I just thought it might be a little bit more stable. And I probably, that one didn't stitch very good. The stippling, you can see where it eyelashed on the bottom. And it didn't on this one. So, like I said, when I get that done, I'll bring it in and show you. So then I have some that I did. There's some at the store, so I can't show you those. But I have at least 10 or 12 different designs for the front of your bags. This one is not good. It can't really be used. And the reason why is you can see this line right here. As it went around in the circle and went up, it didn't trim each time, and I can understand why. And I just don't think that would be a good, I don't like that line there. And even if you try to take those stitches out, it'd still leave a hole. So I didn't put this particular circle design in your files for you to use. Now, and this one is interesting. I bought this bag was a big candy bag, like a Halloween candy bag. And it had all these little packages in it. I have a brown one too. It had all these little packages in it. So what I did was I took the little packages and I opened them up. I did make a charm, and again, that's at the store. So you'll have to try to remember. If you come to class, you'll be able to remember that you saw that. And I will make another charm. It's just a circle charm, and it's this guy. So if I decided I wanted to put him in the charm, then I would cut the end off from here, because I probably would want his hand in the charm. Maybe not, because the charm's not real big. Anyway, that was my reasoning for that. Same with this. I slid it here because I plan on using the back and not the front. So by slitting it there, now I can cut it down each side, and I pretty much have a full picture. And that's what I put on this. I took these full pictures and I laid them on a piece of, this is just a piece of felt. I laid them on a piece of felt, and then I covered them with the vinyl. This is the matte vinyl, the Heat and Bond matte vinyl, and did a pattern over the front of it, and I will make a bag out of that. I thought that was a nice way of using up some of those individual smaller candy bags. So if I had, again at the store, one of the samples that was shown on the Picket Fence Live video is of an Oreo cookie bag. And then I bought these small at the dollar store. They had a little tray of them. I have one over there someplace, with little individual 2 cookies in each packet. I think there were 6 packets. I can't remember for sure. So these are fairly easy to open up. This one I did cut up, and then I just, if you gently pull, you can see it's glued, but it's not a real good glue. So they open up pretty easy. Then I would take something and wipe the inside of the bag, get the food products off from it. And this one, you can see I ripped it a little bit when I was trying to get it open. But if you want to save that and use it, I would continue to open it up. And then when I put my vinyl over the front of it, the vinyl will seal that back together. So you could go ahead and use this one too. It definitely won't be noticeable. These are a little bit small, so probably what I'll do with these is maybe cut the center out of here and make a charm to hang on the bigger Oreo cookie bags. Same with these. The small Skittle packages I would open up the same way that I open up the M&M bags. You could either, this looks like it's the back, I would either slit it here, cut down the sides, then you have the whole front that you could use for something. This isn't wrinkled too bad. You could cut out these words and put them this way on a key fob. That would look good. I don't like Skittles, so obviously you see these aren't opened. And then we have the little Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. I don't know what I did with the big bag. I haven't made it yet. I would do these the same way as I do the Oreo cookie. I would try to separate it from here. The glue on these things isn't real good. If you can get it started. And carefully open it up, especially if you do want to try to use the whole bag. There it ripped a little bit. But again, these bags are pretty small, so I'm not real sure what you would use them for. But it is possible to get it all the way open. And if you had the big Reese's bag that this came in, this would be kind of a cute little square for a charm on the front of the bag. And this one is real thin, so I'm not sure if that'll open up right. The other thing I want to mention is some of the Halloween candy bags, you'll notice, and even everyday candy bags, there's a section here where you can actually see the candy inside. In other words, it's clear. That really isn't a good option to buy a bag like that, I don't think, because you're going to be able to see through that section, and what you're going to see is you're going to see your stabilizer or your batting. So I would try to get the bags that have a design printed all over it. So let's see what we can do with this one, if I can get it open without ripping it too bad. And I certainly don't like these things, so I'll probably give them to Wendy for her kids. Well, there, I started it. But I think what I'm going to do, because the back of this bag isn't necessarily good. Ooh, man, do they smell. And then just cut the sides. I do have various size bags that I've digitized for you. And this would make kind of a cute, I'll put those in a, I'm certainly not going to eat them. I'll put those in a baggie for Wendy's kids. Whew, they're sticky too. And obviously I would wipe the inside of that out and make a, I would probably use from here to here on this one, and either make a pencil bag or some kind of long bag. Like I said, I did a variety of sizes for you. So that's how I would open those up. So I'm going to open this one up. I'm going to cut on each side. And I did just put a new blade in my rotary cutter, so I'm not going to cut it with my rotary cutter. But if I had an old blade in here, I would cut the paper with my rotary cutter. I'm going to use my handy dandy scissors that I have marked old. So I'm going to open that up, and then I'm going to show you how to put the vinyl on it. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I put the vinyl on the bags. I cut the bags apart, and I use there's multiple different kinds of vinyl. This is what I use. It's the Heat and Bond iron-on vinyl. The matte finish comes in a glossy finish too, so I guess it's your choice as to what you wanna use. And the instructions say to cut it either the size or a little bit bigger than the project that you're going to put it on, and then heat your iron up to medium setting and hold it on there for 8 seconds. You need to use the paper backing. You don't iron directly onto the vinyl or you will melt it all over the bottom of your iron. So I like to just get it started and leave this part of the paper on there. And then kind of roll it back. And this little squeegee is really handy. Got some soft, fuzzy stuff on it, and it smooths it out pretty good. I actually just ordered these from Amazon, and I had one for each person in class, but there are more people in class than I thought there would be, than there has been previously. So we will do a drawing, and the ones that don't get a squeegee, you will get one of the sample bags. I'm just cutting off the edges of the vinyl. I don't really want that vinyl stuck onto my, although it would come back up. I have my wool mat on the table here, and then I just put a old dish towel over the top of it. So there, I have that nice and smooth. I have my iron on the medium setting. Then you take the piece of paper that you peeled away, and you put that side without the lines on it down. Put your iron on there and hold it for 10 seconds. Press. Don't iron. Don't do this. Or actually, I guess it said 8 seconds. I'm not going to time it, but we'll just kind of guess. That must be about 8 seconds. Take that off. Looks pretty good. There's no visible, there's those little crinkly lines, but there's really no visible wrinkles where it's doubled over on itself. And when we stipple over the top of that area, it definitely takes those, doesn't take the lines out of there, but they kind of disappear into the stippling. That one's good enough. We'll set it aside. And we'll do this one. I'm not sure. I think on this one I will use the front and the back of the bag. The back of that Skittles bag isn't too bad. It looks pretty nice. Kind of removes any air bubbles that are underneath there. It's a nifty little squeegee. Okay, now this one I'll probably use for a key fob strap. So we'll iron that, not with that piece, not quite long enough. Looks like my iron could use some cleaning up. Got lots of desk press on it. You can hear those air bubbles being squished out of there by the squeegee. Okay, that's it. Now I'll get them ready and I'll do a video on how to sew them. before I put this white background away, I don't need the iron, but I wanted to show you the blocks. I get them in the center of the camera. Wanted to show you the blocks that I did that you can use on the front of the bags. A lot of the bags aren't real big, so I didn't. This is just a 5x7, and I do have some bigger designs than this, but actually 5x7 for this bag would be pretty perfect. Because like I said, a lot of your candy bags aren't real big. So these are the blocks that I did that you can use. There's at least 10 of them in your folder. These are the ones that you can use to put designs on the front of your candy or junk food bags. Or you can use them, like this one's kind of pretty, as a filler for a table runner or a small quilt or whatever you want. And I can do you bigger blocks. I know a lot of quilt blocks are 12x12. If you have a hoop that big and we're able to do an individual block that big, I would digitize that for you. It doesn't take very long because these are already in the program. It's called a decorative fill, and I just have to get the size of the hoop that I want and draw it in there. So these are some of the designs, like I said, that you can use. It's not really edge to edge quilting because it has to go on a block that's about this size. That's about the size of the pattern on the piece of fabric. So here's some of the different ones that I've chosen. This one would be nice on the candy bag. That one's a little bit close. That one again is pretty small. I can make them bigger though. And then there's some flowers, and then there's an interesting, kind of looks like a star. And I wanted to show you, I mentioned earlier that when I was doing these on the big machine, the 6 needle machine, I was having trouble, and you probably can't see it. You can see these little loops all over. Like I said, I'm not sure you'll be able to see that, but there's a definite loop there, and there was quite a few. And this needle is not dull. This is a Schmitz gold titanium size 12 that I had in the machine. In fact, I had all 6. It's a 6 needle, so I had 6 of those needles in there. But because this is only done in one color, I was just using the one needle. And I was stitching at 600 stitches per minute, which is not too fast. And I was having those loops. So I let it finish the design, because this is just a sample throwaway. Then I put a size 14 ballpoint needle in there. And again, you probably can't see that. There are absolutely no loops. And if you hold this up to the light, yeah, you won't be able to see it. It's out of the camera view. You can see the little holes in between that the needle created. And that's why the size 14 needle is good if you're getting those loops, because it will create a bigger hole. So the next time that needle has to go down into that same spot, that bigger hole is there, allowing for more thread to be placed in that same spot. Okay, so now I'm going to shut the camera off again and choose a pattern for my Skittles bag. And then we'll... Okay, I've chosen my design and I've loaded it on the USB stick. And I actually also have moved the camera so that every time I need to see if the video is working, you won't have to see my head stick in there. So anyway, the very first thing that's going to stitch, and that's with all of these bags that I've done for you, will be directly onto the stabilizer. Once again, I've hooped a soft and sheer stabilizer, and I've got a white bobbin in there, and I've got red thread, and I should be good to go. So Like I said, the very first thing to sew is going to be directly onto the stabilizer. Oh! Okay, I have the machine all set up to do the Skittles candy wrapper outside quilting design. I always do the quilting design first on just a separate piece and then treat it like a piece of fabric. It's too hard because the candy wrappers are usually different sizes, so it's hard to make the bag and do the quilting and everything all in one go around like I did with in the last video with that bag. So I have it loaded in the machine, and by the way, I changed the angle of the camera so I now can see if it's recording without sticking my head in there and making funny faces at you. So here we go. There's only 2 steps. The first step is going to be the outline of the placement line, where to place the actual piece of candy wrapper. So that shouldn't take too long to stitch. And it does look like it's going to stitch on that piece of interfacing okay. Like I said, sometimes it doesn't like to stitch just on the interfacing. That square that it's sewing to probably won't be the exact same size as my candy wrapper, so I'll just take a piece of some tape and tape it on there. So that's all finished stitching. I'm going to unhook the hoop here. And I'll fit the front one. Oh, it's not too bad. It's almost perfect. But I still need to tape it down because it'll never stay. And you can see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to cut it in half. I don't know if you can see that. Well, anyway, I'm taking a piece of my paper tape and I laid it on my cutting mat and I cut it in half because it's plenty wide and it doesn't necessarily need to see. You can see the half piece. So I'll take that down and take another piece. Okay, that should be good. Should hold it in place. And I'm not going to put any batting, I don't think, under this one, because the size of the bag is only a 5 by 7. Sometimes when you put batting in there, it gets a little thick. I guess it kind of depends on what you're going to use it for. And this one probably would just go to a kid. These would make nice, fill them with candy and give them to your grandkids or special neighbor kids or somebody filled with candy for Halloween. Okay, this is kind of a shell bubble design. I'm not sure what you call it. It takes 13 minutes and I'm stitching at 500 stitches a minute. So I'm going to let it go ahead and stitch and then I'll come back when it's all finished. I'm stitching the back layer of the Skittles bag, and after I finished the first layer, I noticed that it went, the stitches went into the tape a little bit, which didn't hurt the needle or anything, but it does make it hard to get that tape off then. So hopefully when I actually stitch the bag, it will stitch in far enough to cover that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually spray the back of this one and put it on there, and then this is going to stitch just like the other one, and then I'll finish it and decide what bag I'm going to make out of it, and I will show you that. I have the little 7 by 2-inch piece in there now, and that little piece I will use for probably a key fob. And if I would have been thinking a little bit, I would have put them both in the same hoop along with like the front, because they both would have fit. This one would fit down here this way and the other one up above. But I didn't think about it ahead of time, so I just hooped it separately and shoved it over to one side to save stabilizer, although you can see that's a piece that I've already stitched. Okay, I'm ready to make my Skittles bag, and like I said, I didn't put any, all I put on the back of the was just a stabilizer. I sewed the vinyl directly to the stabilizer, and when I made my front or my lining pieces, I did sew SF101 or iron SF101 onto that because I thought this was just a little bit too thin. Then I stitched I chose the 5x7 design in the plain bag folder that I've created for you, and you can see my piece it's tall enough height-wise, but it's just the same size as the outline of the 5x7 bag. So I cheated a little bit, and I went into my software and I made the outline just a little bit smaller. That pattern won't be in your folder, so if you ran into that problem, you'd have to choose the next size down bag that's in there. I'm not going to restitch this. I can use that, although my bag that I have in here now is 6.6 inches this way. In other words, a little bit more than 6.5, and it's just about 5 inches this way. So I'm going to put the next step is to put the zipper on there. Let me move the camera down a little bit so you can see. And I always put my zipper pull to the left side of the bag when I'm facing the bag. And then I line up the bottom line of the stitching with the bottom edge of the zipper. And in this case, I'm going to move it just a little bit because this smaller bag, I'm going to line up that center line with the center of my zipper. Otherwise, it's going to be, the stitch would be too close to the teeth. So if you can see what I'm doing, I'm lining up my center line with the very middle of the zipper teeth. And I'll tape that in place. Make sure your zipper pull is way out of the way of the stitching line. This tape is really pretty sticky. I can't believe that it doesn't gum up the needle when it stitches over it. But it doesn't. So then I will stitch the next step, and I will stitch my zipper into the correct position, hopefully. Kind of hard to get my hoop on the machine at the angle that I'm sitting. Hopefully, because I adjusted the size of the design that doesn't stitch too close. Whoop. And it did get a little bit close. Ooh, I'm going to stop that and cut that zipper back out of there and move it. I didn't really allow for when I made the design smaller, and I don't want, if you can see that stitching, I don't want that stitching that close to that side of the zipper. So I'm going to shut the video off. So I ripped the zipper out, and I actually moved it down this way a little bit farther, like I said, because I made the pattern a little bit different size. That also has, and didn't restitch that outline. It definitely has thrown it off a little bit as to where I should place my parts. It looks like it's going to stitch okay this time. It's pretty good distance, 1/4 of an inch or so away from the zipper teeth there, and it looks like it's going to stitch pretty good here. Now, you shouldn't have to make any of those adjustments, but if you do notice that you don't have your zipper exactly in the right spot, you do need to stop and move it rip those stitches out and move it one way or the other. So now I'm going to take the hoop out of the machine, and I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to trim that section behind the zipper where the stabilizer is. Okay, as you can see, I've trimmed the back of that stabilizer away. And once again, make sure, because there's a couple lines there, that you're trimming the right section away, because if you trim down here, then you actually trimmed your stitching line away. Now we're going to put the lining piece on. That goes on the back, and it goes down. This line, very bottom line here, is the one that it's going to stitch on. So that's where we need to place the edge of the fabric. So it's going to go right side down, because remember, it's going to fold over, and you need to see this is the inside of the bag. Now it is a little bit flimsy, but like I said, this isn't a very big bag. So if you wanted to, you could place a piece of stable batting here. I'm not going to, just because I don't really care if this bag isn't real firm. Okay, now I'm going to flip that hoop over. Hopefully you can still see that. And then I'm going to take the front of my bag, and it needs to end up like this, which means I need to flip it over and line it up. And as you can see, it doesn't meet here, but remember, I changed the pattern. So hopefully I made the pattern small enough so it will stitch inside those lines. We'll see. I'm going to tape this down. And then I'll put it back in the machine and see how I did. Now make sure that back section right here stays flat. And I'll push the next step, and I should be able to tell right away. Yeah, that's going to work. Well, that's stitched real close to the edges. So the next thing I'm going to do is fold this down, because there isn't any batting, and the design is already on there because we stippled it ahead of time. And what it's going to do is it's going to stitch this line across here to hold that in place. And actually, I probably should have folded the back down too, but we'll see. I can't remember, and I'm not following any instructions, which I have written instructions for you. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, I didn't need to fold the back down. The next step is the section where you fold the back down, and it'll stitch the front and the back at the same time. It'll tack them in place, and that's a little bit different than the other bag that we did in the previous video. And that's because we had stippling on the front of that bag, and we didn't want it on the inside of the lining. So I sprayed that, and I am going to tape it too. I want to tape the corners. And I'll flip it over. I do believe this will stay. I suppose I could put a little piece of tape on there, but I think it will stay in place. I'm going to put the hoop back in the machine and start it back up again. Now this section here will tell me whether or not I brought it in far enough, and it looks like I did, because it is catching the edge of the fabric, and it actually, there's plenty of room down here, which I knew there would be. It was on the sides that the bag was too big. Wow, that just caught it. But it'll be okay. So the next step, I place the back of my bag right side down onto the front, and it's going to stitch. Oh no, I forgot. I have to put the little tab in there, and even though this is a small bag, I am going to put a tab in there just in case somebody wants to put a cute bob or a cute little charm on. And actually, like I said, I kind of had forgotten about the tab, but you can tell by looking at the screen that tab needs to be put there. I think that'll be okay. Now, I can put my front on. Or my back, actually. And I should tape this in place, but I am just going to hold it. So don't do what I do what I say. But if you're going to do it this way, definitely keep your fingers out of the way. You notice I have my hand behind the stitching area. I did forward the machine one step, and that's because I had already folded the back down. I didn't have, my design was already on the front, so if you notice there's an extra step in the pattern, just forward the machine through that step, because these patterns are used for multiple different ways to make them. In other words, because this was already stippled on the front, I didn't have to, I folded that back section down at the same time. Okay, and if you notice, I forgot to unzip my zipper. So I'm going to rip out just a few of these stitches right here and unzip the zipper. And then I'll come back in and stitch over that area. You probably won't make that same mistake that I did because you will be following your instructions. Now, I did write the instructions, but I don't have a sheet of the instructions in front of me. But if I would have looked at the screen on my machine here, I could have noticed that that was going to sew, and then I needed to unzip that zipper. I didn't have to unzip it very far. Or unstitch this very far. The zipper pull is way down here, so it's about halfway. But I do have to back up some stitches so that I can go over top of that area. Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to back up some stitches so that I can just stitch over top of this, and then I'll come back. You don't need to watch me fix. So the mistake is all fixed, and I backed up just far enough to stitch this, and once it stitched this, then I did some, I stitched back again and stitched over that twice, because you want it to stitch at least twice so that seam is secure. Now the very last step is to flip the machine over and put the, So my mistake is all fixed. I just backed the machine up so it would stitch over these stitches a little bit again, although I did do it twice, so that the seam is still nice and secure. Now the last step is to flip the hoop over and lay your last piece of lining right side down up against the other piece of lining. Right sides together, like I said. Tape a little bit so that when you flip it back, it stays in place. You don't want to spray that area, because if you sprayed inside there, you'd be spraying on the inside of the bag. Hook it down and stitch the last step, and that should be it. I'll shut the video off, and then I'll turn the bag inside out, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get all done. I've trimmed my stabilizer away, but I want to remind you again that when you trim around the edge of the bag, I won't have to trim much here, because the vinyl, or the candy bag, was almost as big as, in other words, in the beginning it was bigger than my pattern. I made my pattern a little smaller. So right here between these two sections where you're going to hand stitch, when you trim that, trim it from the back so you can see that area, because I want you to leave on this outside area. You can trim within 1/4 inch of the bag, but in that one area at the bottom, you need to leave a little bit so you can fold it under and hand stitch it. So now here's my two pieces right here that are going to fold in. So the rest of this excess, which in this case is just the candy wrapper with the vinyl on it. Now I will turn it inside out and fold those in and stitch them by hand.